Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fam Sports New York Varsity. I'm your host, Frank Langella, joined by my co-host, Marcelio Langella. And this is our team preview for Section 1A. And for this show, we're going to go over the teams as not too in-depth, or the show will be a long time. We're going to go over some teams and some players in Section 1A. We want to welcome all our fans. Those who do not know, we cover Section 1 football, we cover the teams, we do breakdowns, we cover the games. And so make sure you guys follow us on all our social media accounts. That's Twitter, that's Instagram, that's on YouTube. Make sure you guys subscribe. And, for this show, we're going to just go over all the teams in the league. We're going to talk about some of the players, like I mentioned, talk about, kind of our takes on some of the teams. And then we're going to go to some bold takes at the end. I'm going to give some bold takes, Mars, and you can tell me if you buy or sell any of them. So let's get down to it. But before we go, make sure you guys can access all our content on our website at famsportsny.com. You can also, I know there were some inquiries we talked about last video about any donations or merchandise. You can also get that on our website, so definitely check it out. But let's start with 1A, Mars, and the league in 1A is broken into two. There's a North League and a South League, 8 teams each. And the way it works is, and Kevin Devaney does a pretty good job of it on his bracketology page on kdjblog.com. The top 3 teams in each division are automatic playoff berths, and then there is 2 wild cards, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to start with the North and then go to the South, and then we'll go to our predictions. And we're going to start, again, in the North, the first team. Let's talk about Somers. Somers, obviously, everyone knows, longtime coach, has left the Somers program, start of a new era. In 2020, they went 6-0, Mars. They won the regional title against John J. Cross River. And, Somers is a well-oiled machine, Mars. 5 straight years of 6 or more wins before the COVID, well, actually including the COVID season now. It's 5 straight. They've only had 1 losing season, I think, in the last 16 years. So this has obviously been a well-oiled program. And they, to me, have a lot to prove. They lose a lot of guys. I think offensively, about 3 of the 11 starters are projected to be coming back on the offensive line. Only 1 out of 5 quarterback graduated, and they lose a guy like Kaiser, Kossow, Deegan, 4 of those offensive line starters that I mentioned. But defensively, the burden is not as bad, right? They return about 5 of their defensive starters, but they still lose those guys like Cheeks and Deegan and Kaiser, who were really big-time players for them. And going to the players to watch for this group, Mars, obviously we start with Jake Polito, the offensive tackle, the junior, 6'3", 285 pounds, dominant force on both sides of the ball. He was a Frank's finest. He's going to have to anchor and be he's going to have to be Somers' best player, in my opinion, on both sides of the ball for them to compete in what I believe is what their goal is every year, and that is to win a section title. And, in 2020, the spring, they felt that they were the best team. And so now, with the normal season coming, or normal season trying to go, that's going to be the goal. But, some of the other guys, another guy, I think, again, defensively, I think they have the guys. Ethan Krause, an inside linebacker, tight end, another Frank's finest. This kid, well-rounded tight end. One of the defensive linemen coming back. Not too many people talk about Mars, defensive tackle, Dylan Fowler, right? So that's another guy, got significant reps on the defensive line. A guy like Luke Kennedy, I'm looking to see at the linebacker spot. Can he step up and play that other linebacker spot? And then obviously Anthony Mancuso, who I think was going to be big for them on both sides of the ball at safety and wide receiver. To me, he is Somers' breakout player. Another Frank's finest as a DB. But then there's some other guys, right? Some under-the-name guys. TJ Olifers, Derek Marcus. And I thought Derek Marcus was a solid corner in his limited reps. So you can see there's going to be some new faces. But at the bottom line, Somers, I think it has the talent to compete. The biggest question mark to me, Mars, is who's going to replace Kaiser. And obviously the big losses on the offensive line. And I think that what's going to help as they establish that is this defense. And that's what I'm looking for. I think this defense is going to be pretty solid. And this pass attack could be pretty solid. They're going to be a different type of offense. They don't have that bell cow. And I'm interested to see who fills that void. But yeah, that's kind of my take on Somers. Mars, we'll go one more team and then you'll give your opinion on it. And just before, I forgot to mention, when we talk about projected starters, again, these are projected based on the conversations we had with coaches. We didn't get to speak to all the coaches, obviously, with the difficult offseason. And if we don't mention you, it doesn't mean that, we don't think that you're a quality player, right? This is, again, what we see on tape, what we talk to the coaches, And sometimes kids can use this to motivate themselves and play, and prove why they should have been talked about on the show. Let's just leave it at that. But let's go to the next team, Mars Lords, another team in the North, coached by Sean Keenan. First season, he was the JV coach the last couple years, replacing longtime coach Walsh, who had a lot of success at Lords. And in the spring, they went 2-1. And when I spoke to Coach, obviously he comes in with a new program. The number one thing he wants is to make their school number one state academic, right, for their student athletes. That was the big thing I found to be really interesting. He talked about academics first, and he wants the kids to play hard and then obviously compete for a championship second. And offensively, they're going to be running that double wing, so you're going to see a different style of offense. And they graduated some talented players. They're returning about 4 of the 11 starters offensively, 3 of them on the offensive line, which is good, but they lost their quarterback. They lost a stud tight end, Rapolleia. 4 to 11 defensive starters projected back. But they lose a guy like Joe Krause. And when I look at players on this team, the big one to me, again, was one of the Frank's finest, quarterback and defensive back, Matt Krause, the junior. He was the Frank's finest DB, but Coach raved about him as a quarterback. They love the way he works. They love the way he plays. I think this is going to be a really good two-way player. I'm interested to see how much defense he plays because he's the quarterback, but I think this kid is a really solid athlete. Another guy to keep in mind, fullback and linebacker John Matthew Marcy Jr., 6 feet, 205 pounds, physical on both sides of the ball. I think this kid could be a breakout player for them. They're going to need him to be. Angelo Salato, another guy running back and linebacker, 5'9", 205 pounds, low center of gravity, really knows how to run through contact. And then looking at some of the line, right? Grant Hold, this kid, big kid, 6'2", 250. Sebastian Nuzamau, 5'11", 215. Nick Moustakis, 5'9", 230. You're not seeing real tall guys, but some thickness. And to run that double wing, Mars, they're going to have to be, Mars. Which team do you want to talk about?
I'm going to definitely talk about Somers. I feel like when you look at this Somers team, they've always been a pretty solid program and dominant program. And now it's going to be a big question of who can now step into the shoes of some of these key players that left.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the biggest things is going to be that fact that Kaiser is gone. Who's going to now take up that mantle as being the bell cow running back? And I think when you look at the Somers team, you're going to see that they have 3 out of 11 starters, projected starters coming back. 1 of the 5 offensive linemen come back, and granted, I think 5 out of 11 defenders, if projections are right. And I think it's going to be a tough one. I'm not saying that I don't think they're going to have a bad year at all. I just think that's a tough thing to replace all those key players, and it's really going to bank on the star guys that you mentioned. There are Frank's finest players and Jake Polito and Ethan Krause. I think those guys have to definitely elevate the team, but it also is going to depend on the guys that may not have been starters last year, but are still filling in on senior roles. I mean, some of the guys you mentioned, like Dylan Fowler, Anthony Mancuso, guys like that are now seniors on this team and may not have been the star players that Somers might have had, but they need to now take up the mantle and continue that going forward. Because you know what? Like you said, Somers has been a dominant program for some time, and it feels like they've always had a good team, right? But now it's, can they continue this push going forward? Even though you lost some really talented guys, and it's never easy to do, but if they can do it, then it shows you that this program is still rocking and rolling.
Yeah, and before we can move on really quick, teams like New Rochelle, they graduate a lot of seniors every year, and every year they produce a high-quality product. That's what Somers wants to be, right? Where every year they are a team that competes for the section title. Just another guy steps in, and it's ready to go.
Yep.
Let's go to another team, Mars Mapac. In 2020, they went 4-2. They won 4 straight, and I feel like this is, to end the year, this is a really important year for them. I mean, it's been 5 years without the playoffs, and I know people like to bring up the qualifying round, and no disrespect to anybody, but I don't count qualifying rounds. I know they did that in Section 1 for a few years. Qualifying rounds, to me, count as a playoff because you're not the final 8. Right, a qualifying round is to
technically you're having the top 16.
Yeah, it's practically every team goes into the qualifying round besides a handful of teams, right? So the last time they want to call it, I guess in 2017, they went to the qualifying round and lost to North Rockland to try to get into the playoffs, right? So it's been a few years since they've been in the playoffs, the last 4 years, 16 and 17, but they bring back a lot of players, Mars. They bring back their quarterback, they bring back a couple linemen, a couple receivers, and about 7 or 8 defensive starters. I feel like this is the year that they have to try to make a run. And just a couple kids to talk about, Mars. The first one is the Frank's finest kid, Adam Montalvo. 6'3", 280 pounds. This guy is a anchor on both sides of the ball, really disruptive as a defensive tackle, but he was also really solid as an offensive tackle. He's going to be huge for this team. Another guy, Mars, running back and safety, Steven Perrone, right? They lose Bastone, which is a big-time player on both sides of the ball, huge void. But Steven Perrone, again, 5'9", 175 pounds. I thought he ran hard and was a nice compliment. Now he's got to take on, obviously, a much bigger role. But I thought he was a pretty solid two-way player. And there's another guy to look out for, Mars. Joe Koch, the junior, wide receiver and defensive back. This kid, 5'10", athletic kid. I thought he made some really nice plays defensively in the spring. He might be a breakout player for that team. But to me, we hear a lot about this senior class, right, over the last 5 to 6 years. I'm looking to see, right, can we live up to that talk? Right, because we live in the Mahopac area. We hear about, obviously, good teams and not so great teams. This is a team that has been talked about for a while. Let's go to another team, Mars, and it's Brewster, okay, coached by Ed Mulvihill. And in 2020, it was a bit of a struggle, right? They went 2-4. And when I spoke to Coach, they want to improve each week. They want to compete for a spot in the playoffs. They know they're going to be inexperienced. But the big thing looking at the offense, Mars, they got to get better in pass protection. And defensively, offensively, it was protect the quarterback, and defensively, they thought they struggled in defending the pass, and I think that was the case. And when you look at the starters coming back, they are going to have some inexperience. So only 4 of the 11 projected starters on the offense, 2 out of the 5 on the offensive line. 2 out of 5 is not bad, but they do return their quarterback. I think the biggest loss is losing Rhodes as a running back. Defensively, 3 out of the 11. So they lose even more. And losing guys like Milano and Borsari are big, tough losses that they have to fill. But looking at some of the players to watch that are going to help this Brewster team, first it starts with the quarterback to me, Chris Donahue, the senior. This kid, 6'4", 230 pounds, has a lot of talent, right? Strong, tough, but they have to correct those mistakes, right? They have to correct those mistakes. But I really love the toughness and the strength that he has. It's now time to put it all together. Another guy to keep in mind, Frank's finest, wide receiver and defensive back, Nick Saye. The senior, 5'9", 185 pounds, really reliable target. I thought he was really productive. Coach talked about they have a few wide receivers, right? You go Bryce Washington, JT Thomas. They could probably throw the ball a little bit. But another in the running game, Will Martinez, the senior, 5'9", 180 pounds. A bit of a more physical back than the guy they had last year, which was Rhodes, who was a home run hitter. This could be a guy who runs through contact. And another guy out of the backfield, Joe Fuso, the junior. Coach says they really like the work that he put in. And a couple defensive guys are going to have to anchor this down. Ryan Costellos on the defensive line and offensive line. I thought he made some nice plays during the spring, but to me, my breakout player is Dominic Rienzi, the senior linebacker and offensive lineman. This guy is a thumper at the linebacker spot, 5'10", 220 pounds. He's going to have to be big. My biggest question mark for this team is this offensive line. They have to protect the quarterback, especially if they want to throw the ball. But I'm looking at if they can, I think this pass tag could be pretty good. Let's go to another team, Mars, John J. Cross River. And obviously, coached by Jimmy Clark. And before this COVID season, Mars, they have won 8 or more games in 3 straight years. And in 2020, they went 5-1, and they lost to Somers in the regional championship. Since 2009, Mars, they are 76-24. And it's just been a tremendous run by John J. Cross River. It was not that big of a school, right? But again, they lose a lot of guys. Offensively, about 4 of the 11 starters projected to return. The big one is on the offensive line. 1 out of the 5. And they didn't just lose linemen. They are some stud linemen that really helped them with some power running game. And this offense is probably going to look a bit different. They had big bodies in the spring. I think this team is going to be a little bit more athletic. Defensively, they had the number 2 defense in the spring. So they lost a lot of guys on that side too. 4 of the 11 starters coming back. Marcin, they lost some stud linebackers in Halafanua and Brennan. But looking at the players that are coming back, you got to start with the Frank's finest athlete, Chris DiChiara, the junior, 5'11", 160 pounds, lightning in a bottle. But I'm going to look at also the quarterback too, because Chris, he's going to play some quarterback, running back, wide receiver. There's another quarterback that they have, Craig Galea. This is the junior, 6'4", 180 pounds, long, strong arm, right? He's not, I don't think, as athletic as Chris, obviously, but he's more of that pocket passer present. And Coach talked about he's not afraid to use a 2-quarterback system. A couple other guys, Austin Zaganino, Frank's finest defensive back, wide receiver, kid 6 feet, 170. Christian Shapiro, another wide receiver, right? They got the wide receivers. Nick Savastano, another, they're going to have the skilled guys, right? And then you look on the defensive side of the ball, those guys play defensive back too. And another guy to add is Tyler Palladino, 5'10", 175 pounds. This is another active kid when he got significant reps. The big question to me is going to be up front, right? And I'm looking at 2 guys. One returning guy, offensive lineman and linebacker, Joseph Galea, 6'2", 200 pounds. This guy was a a mobile lineman, right? Not the biggest guy, but he moved well, he pulled well. And a guy to keep in mind, my breakout player, Gerard Garofalo, the junior, 6'1", 250 pounds. This guy could be the anchor on this offensive line, that big tackle, big lineman who can move bodies at the point of attack. And don't forget about the kicking, Mars. Lucas Orlovitz, the senior, one of the better kickers in Class A. Who do you want to talk about, Mars?
I'm going to talk about Brewster and John Jay Cross River. I'll first talk about Brewster. I think it's going to be a really difficult thing for anyone to replace players like Milano. And I think that when you look at the projected starters that are returning, 4 out of 11 on offense, 2 out of 5 on the offensive line, and 3 out of the 11 on defense, which is a lot, right?
Yeah.
And when we see in programs that usually have, not a lot of returning players, it's usually been a struggle. And I think that it's difficult to kind of step into the shoes of some of these key guys that left. But it's really going to, in my opinion, the biggest thing that's going to be the pusher of whether or not the season can be successful, Brewster, is going to be the play of the quarterback and also the offensive line.
Yeah.
I think if you have a stable offensive line play and it allows them to give Donahue the ability to show his athleticism, show his prowess, then I think this offense will be rocking and rolling. But it's obviously going to be dependent on the defense as well. Can the front seven really step it up and really stop any sort of rush attack? Because if you watch some of their games, they had difficulty.
And it was defending the pass, but you just mentioned the front seven. If they can stop the run, if they can get pressure on the quarterback, they can help their secondary.
Exactly. And I think if that could be the set for a lot of other teams too. But John Jay Cross River, you have a team that, similar to Somers, has always been a dominant force, right? And the game they had last year was a great game. It was a battle.
It was.
And when you look at now John Jay Cross River and projected starters returning, it's a similar state to what Brewster's like. And that's why I picked these two teams to focus on, because they're very similar in how many starters are returning. 4 out of 11 on offense, 1 out of 5 offensive line, and 4 out of the 11 on defense projected. My biggest thing, the difference between Cross River and Brewster, is going to be the fact that I think that John Jay has just more talent around these younger guys, because you have to really look at it. One of our Frank's Finest, one of the breakdowns you had on the show this past week, Chris DiChiara, right?
Yeah.
A kid that can really do it all. And I think that he's going to be the wild card for this team. On his success is going to drive the offense going forward, but it really is going to also depend on Craig Galea, right, the quarterback. And I think that, it's going to be an interesting ride.
Yeah.
But specifically, I'm going to key in on the offensive line. I gave my bold prediction saying that John Jay Cross River's offensive line was the best in Section 1.
In the spring.
Yeah. And,
they lost 4 of their starters.
They lost 4 of their starters.
Yep.
Now it's good. The question is going to be whether or not this John Jay offensive line can meet the standards in which last year's team had set, right? And, I don't like to just jump on any bandwagons, just start declaring the best offensive lines in any.
Well, yesterday,
any
it was 2 days ago, you declared Jake Polito the best offensive lineman in Class A.
I declared the best offensive lineman, but they'll use a whole unit, right? That's a very bold thing to say, and I stand by it to this day. But now it's going to be the question is, can they replace all these stars on this offensive line?
Absolutely. And let's move on now to the next group, and we'll do 3 more teams, and then you'll let us know which one you want to talk about, Mars. And let's go to Yorktown. And Yorktown in 2020, they were 3-2. Season got cut short because of a COVID issue. But before the COVID season, they had 6 or more wins in 8 of the last 11 years, only 3 losing seasons in the last 16 years. This is another program that has continually pushed out good programs and good teams. And when I spoke to Coach, the emphasis was on self-improvement. And I thought that, he actually brought up good. The defensive coordinator set up a thing for the team where they have focus on a goal of each kid. Each kid has to set up a goal that they want to achieve. And I thought that was an interesting little dynamic. And offensively, in the spring, they were a run-heavy group, and they want to put teams in conflict. But defensively, they like to be exotic. They like to be very aggressive, and they produce a pretty solid defensive team that I think could be even better. Looking at the players coming back, Marcel, offensively, 7 of the 11 projected starters back, 4 out of the 5 on the offensive line, including bringing back their quarterback. Obviously, losing a guy like Keith Boyer was big time. But they lost him early in the spring season. But they did lose McCarr, too, which is a really good player for them. Defensively, 6 out of the 11 coming back. And you look at this players list, and they have some solid players coming back. And I know they've been a little bit beat up, but one guy that's under the radar to me, and I went over to his scrimmage to watch him play, Dylan Carter, Okay, I think this guy, he runs the ball hard. I'm pretty sure he didn't play in the spring, so he's coming back this time around, and he was impressive when I watched over at the scrimmage. He was running hard, and I think this is a guy who can help carry that load in the backfield. But a couple other guys, and defensive end, edge player, running back, Marco McKnight, he was a Frank's finest. I think he could be a real force, two-way player for them. Another guy impressed me, linebacker and offensive lineman Vincent Capelli. This is a guy, glue guy for this team. He's a leader. He's a film guy. He's a gym guy. And, he is going to be he is going to help dictate and anchor on both sides of the ball, especially in the defense in the middle, which is a really important spot for this Yorktown defense. But another guy I really like, Mars, Dino Bowen, the offensive lineman and defensive lineman. I think he's one of the best centers in Section 1. He's up there, and obviously Class A. He was a Frank's finest, and he's a scrappy defender. So, he's another two-way guy. But there's a bunch of other guys. Vito DeBellis in the secondary, Jack Carlin in the secondary. These are guys they're bringing back that have had significant reps, and you can't go talking about them without bringing back the quarterback, Justin Morellis, the junior. He was coaches talked about his improved strength, his improved decision-making. This guy on rollouts is a very dangerous player. He's not a tall guy, right? He's a short guy, but he was another guy that you could see the athleticism oozing from him. And another offensive lineman and defensive lineman, Dion Bruchaz, the junior. This guy, 6'1", big kid. And if he's healthy and he's playing, this is another add addition to this offensive line. An underrated guy to talk, and coach brought him up, Justin Price, the sophomore. This kid was a basketball player on varsity as a freshman, coming out for the football team. This guy could make some plays. And I got to go back to kicking, Mars. Vincetti Lyon, the senior, again, another solid kicker and a group of kickers in Class A that are pretty darn good. Let's go to another team, and then I'll pass it off to you. Lakeland, Mars. And in 2020, they went 2-3, and they had some tough, heartbreaking losses in 2020, including that last one. They're looking to get to 500 for the first time since 2015. And coach talks about they want to constantly compete. Lakeland proved over the last 2 years, in my opinion, that they are a tough out. Right now, you got to take that next step and win those close games. Right, you got to get over the hump. And offensively, they're looking to hit more big plays, finish drives. That was a big thing. And defensively, getting to the passer, which at times struggled in those close games to rush the passer and finish on the quarterback. And looking at the players coming back, they're also losing a decent amount, but they're bringing back, 5 out of 11 on offense. The big thing to me, 3 of the 5 on the offensive line is going to be big, but they have to replace their quarterback. And defensively, they got to replace linebacker Libretti, which is a big loss. And I'm looking at a quarterback to step in for Santucci, Steve Duvakij. And I probably butchered his name, and I apologize to him if he's watching the show, but the senior coach is very confident in him. He thinks he could be a dual-threat guy and lead this offense. But a couple other guys. Kevin Hickey on the defensive line was a Frank's finest to me. They're going to need someone to help anchor that offensive line and lead the way. Another guy, Carl Lund, offensive lineman and defensive end, 5'11", 220 pounds, stocky kid with some nice burst to him. And to round it all off, an outside linebacker, running back, Joe Malaspina. He had an interception versus Panis. I thought he had a nice sack. He was another active guy when he got in. He had a nice sack against Yorktown, This is another guy who's going to have to step up and lead on this team. Mars, to me, the biggest question mark before I pass it to you for the Lakeland team is size. I think size and the skill position is a big question mark for this team. And I'm looking at, what I'm excited about is the quarterback play. Coach raves about the quarterback play from this young man and from Steve, and I'm excited to see it. Mars, what team do you want to talk about?
I'll talk about Yorktown. I think that this is a very intriguing situation. Yorktown is very similar to Cross River and to Somers, to the point where they've been dominant for a very long time. And I think that this is a good opportunity for them because of the fact that they have so many returning players. Projection, right? 7 out of the 11 returning starters. 4 out of 5 offensive line.
Yep.
6 of the 11 defenders. Granted, you're going to lose some players here and there, but when a team comes back with 4 out of the 5 offensive linemen, usually that coming year, that offensive line is pretty top notch. We've seen this happen in the previous years when we did these team previews. You can go back and look at those teams that had the most returning starters in the offensive line. Usually had a pretty good rush attack.
Now, granted, right? Teams have been practicing for 2 weeks,
yep.
And there's injuries that occur. There's people who beat out starters who come back.
Yep.
Right. So those things happen. Right. Projected is what the word means. It's projected based on where they were in the spring.
If this is the case where this is correct, where 4 out of the 5 are returning, then usually this is a very good sense of, a good offensive line in general.
Veteran offensive line.
A veteran offensive line that now understands the scheme. They've been on starters for 2 years straight or 3 years, depending on what player it is, and the chemistry's rolling, right? And that's the biggest thing I have to look at. When it comes to Yorktown, their defense, it should be rocking and rolling.
I think the defense is going to be good.
Yeah, they're going to be flying around the field. And I think that it's going to now depend on some of these young guys that we were pointing to that now have become seniors. Can they lead the pack, right? Can they lead them going forward? And it's going to, in my opinion, going to start with Dino Bowen, right? I think that he's a Frank's finest for a reason, and he's a top-notch player, but I'm a big offensive line guy, and I think that if you have a good offensive line, life is good, right? Because now you can do a lot of things on offense, and if you can control the time of possession, then basically you can run the game, right? And I think that's going to be the key to success for Yorktown. Whether or not, I'm not making any bold predictions for Yorktown. I'm not going to make
my bold predictions come at the end.
I'm not going to make any end of the year things, but right now, I just think that when you look at this team, they have projected-wise the most returning players we've seen up to this point.
I think they're just behind Mayapack. Mm-hmm. Right? I think it's Mayapack and them. So, out of the North so far. Let's move to the final team in the North, Morris, Walter Panis. And again, this is a building team coached by Bill Castro. 2020, they went 0-6, right? It was a bit of a struggle, but again, this is what you expect from smaller teams trying to rebuild, right? It's a process. And when I spoke to Coach, he really talked about getting the team to be more physical. He was happy about the turnaround. The numbers have been pretty solid, and he wants to continue to build from the ground up, from the youth all the way up to the varsity. And offensively, Coach talked about trying to simplify things, letting the kids play faster. But defensively, the big thing was about tackling. And when you watch Walter Panis, I think that was their biggest issue. There was too many times with too many missed tackles and being pushed away from the point of attack. So definitely the physicality is big. And they bring back some guys, right? Offensively, 5 of the 11 projected starters, Mars, 2 out of the 5 offensively. They do have to replace their quarterback. And defensively, similar thing, right? 5 of the 11 starters coming back. Big news is 3 of them on the defensive line. So up front, they are going to get some reinforcements back. And players to watch to me, obviously the first one's got to be the big tackle, Malik McNeil. Now, if he plays defense, we don't know. But if he's just offense, it's good. If he plays both, it's even better for this team because, again, Frank's finest, 6'8" kid, 300-plus pounds, long arms, can move. This is a guy who can really set the tone and push the point of attack at his side. And I would imagine they plan on using that quite often. Another guy, to me, this is a quarterback battle between 2 kids, but quarterback, wide receiver, and corner, Nate Lugo. And I thought he was a pretty darn solid defensive back, solid athlete. They're battling it out the quarterback spot. I'm interested to see who wins that battle. And the other kid is their Swiss Army knife, Travis Carlucci. He's a quarterback, running back, safety. This kid is a sophomore, Mars. I think he's going to be the breakout player for this team. He was a deadly returner in the spring. He had multiple return touchdowns. He's a really good athlete. Could be one of the better ones by the end of this season in the class, which is going to say a lot about him. But one more guy, John Baisley, the senior. This kid's 6'1", 210 pounds. He's a defensive end, mixing up at linebacker. Could be playing some offensive line. You're going to see some new faces and Walter Panis try to step up, but those guys, I think, are the big ones to keep in mind. And to me, the biggest question mark is that physicality, coach. Can they be physical enough to compete in a tough North Division? And I'm just looking to see this program if they can make the next step. You have any comments on Walter Panis, Mars, before we move to the South League?
Yeah, when you look at Walter Panis, I think they've had some struggles in the past the spring season.
Well, multiple years.
I've seen the past few seasons. Yeah. And I think that, when you look at projected starters, 5 of the 11 on offense, 2 out of the 5 on the offensive line, and 5 of the 11 on defense, I think the biggest thing is looking at whether or not they can develop a powerful front, right? Specifically, like when you look at the D-line, 3 out of the 5 returning players on the D-line. Yeah. I think that's important. And we never really got to factor in Malik McNeil before, right? This is we call it an X factor. He's like the big X factor because now you have this guy who's going to Penn State, committed to Penn State, and he's playing on offense. The question is he going to play on defense too, right? And if he does, that defensive line can be scary, right? And I think scary because as an offensive guy game planning, you're going to say, well, we have to key in on this Malik McNeil, which allows for other players to now be able to come open, right?
Yeah.
I kind of mentioned that during the Frank's Finest, is that everyone's going to be looking at him, right? Everyone's going to look at this dude, because how could you not look at him,
Yep.
right? He's massive, right? And I think that this could be an opportunity for Walter Bannis to really now utilize a talent to this level.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move to the South League, Morris. It's the other division, another 8 teams. And let's start with Rye. And in 2020, they went 6-0. They won the region. They beat Nyack in the regional game. But everyone, I don't think they forgot, Rye's actually the defending Section 1 champs. In 2019, they won the section title versus Yorktown. And they've had 8 straight years of 6 or more wins. A really tremendous effort and program. Rye is up there, and Rye is arguably the best program in Class A. In recent memory. And again, we know about the offense. They had a really potent rush attack and a good play action, and I would imagine they're going to try that remedy again. Defensively, they were really solid in the red zone. They were kind of a bend but don't break defense, and they really made a lot of plays. And again, I don't have the exact projected numbers. I didn't speak to Coach about the projected starters coming back. But offensively, you lost some skill guys in Lavelle and Perez-Sagnini, and defensively you lose Bartlett, Griffiths. So they do have to replace some guys, but they have some ammunition, and it starts obviously with their running back, Caden Whaling, the senior, Mars, right? Frank's Finest. I call him the bad man for a reason. He's going to be a big reason why if Rye wants to repeat as section champs, 6'2", 185 pounds, really solid all-around back. Good vision, good patience. And obviously another Frank's Finest is the quarterback, Mars. Owen Kovacs, the senior athletic quarterback, was a really solid play action. If he could get more consistent in the pocket, he could be a real dangerous all-around quarterback, and it brings a whole new dynamic to this offense. And then a couple defenders, Mars. To me, I look at a guy like Jack Garnett. He's an electric defender. He's all over the field. They move him around. He's one of the Frank's Finest is because, he creates offensive coordinator headaches. Right? Because he can line up on the outside, he can line up inside, he can blitz, he can drop, he can jam. And when this guy's rushing the quarterback, he can cause a lot of problems. I'm really excited for this young man. And another guy I think could be the breakout player for this team, Ryan Surhoff. He was a linebacker and offensive lineman. This kid, 6'2", 195 pounds. He was kind of the power running, stopping guy. He was that Mike linebacker who was sitting over the center and a guy who had to make a lot of plays in between the tackle box. And that's big for Rye, who likes to bring a lot of athletes onto the field. You need a guy who can bump and grind and play the run, power run. And that was somebody like Ryan, and I'm expecting him to do it again. Another guy is, they had a 2-quarterback system. I'm looking at Teddy Berkery to see where he fits, because this is another athletic guy who can make plays. There's a lot of unknowns on Rye, but what you do know is constantly every year, Mars, they're bringing in talent. So to me, the biggest question mark is the offensive line, right? Because they're not going to be very big, I don't think, in the offensive line, but they're going to be athletic, and that remedy worked in the spring. They're trying to duplicate that again in the fall. I'm interested to see how that works, but I can tell you, if they can get the line playing well, I think this offense is going to be very lethal. I'll go one more team, Marson, and I'll pass it to you. Let's go to the big rival, Harrison. In 2020, they went 4-2, and I really thought they took a nice step forward. When they lost to Rye, at first they lost to Cross River, then you lose to Rye, and it felt like the wheels were going to fall off the season, but they played a tough Spring Valley team and won, and I thought it was a character victory for the program and a good step in the right direction. When I spoke to Coach, they have expectations. People talk about, hey, they graduated a lot of kids. They're going to go into a rebuilding year. There is no rebuilding year in Harrison. Coach made no qualms about it. You can't be mediocre in Harrison. And, they brought in a defensive coordinator in Greenberg, and they're excited to try to continue the trend of Harrison in the right direction. They had a really potent offensive attack, but they lose a bunch of guys, right? Projected starters, 4 out of the 11, but 3 on the offensive line returning, which is big. They have to replace their quarterback, who had a lot of success. And defensively, again, 4 out of the 11 starters. So there's a lot of people who need to be replaced. But some of the names to watch, Mars, start with the running back and outside linebacker. Really good two-way player for them. Frank's Finest running back, A.J. Troilo. We obviously know about his father, who was a longtime coach at Harrison, currently at Valhalla. This guy is going to be a bell cow for them. And I think he was really solid on outside runs and counters. And he showed the toughness that he could play even the fullback spot in that triple option offense. But to me, he's just a well-rounded football player. Another guy, John Karapitas, Frank's Finest defensive end, outside linebacker, one of the better pass rushers coming back. and I think he's going to have to be a big player for them both as a pass rusher and stopping the run. But another guy to keep in mind, their linebacker and offensive lineman, Thomas Ventriglio, 5'9", 220, right? Not a tall guy, but a thumper as a linebacker, and he's going to be another important guy in the offensive line. Again, this is not big-time offensive linemen, but what they are is scrappy, strong, and a guy to round it all off to be that kind of anchor is Peter Ranello, the junior, 6'1", 270 pounds. I think he could be the breakout player for this team. He was a young guy on the varsity who made a lot of nice plays, and he has the potential to make a big jump this year. A couple other guys, another physical running back, Ben Galuzzo, the senior. This guy's 210 pounds. I think he could be that physical presence when some of the other backs are more of a shifty type. And then a couple other guys, Nico Marinelli, the junior, is another shifty type of running back. And for the triple option, you need multiple guys like that. But the last question I got is the quarterback. Because in triple option, Marsh, you need a quarterback who is decisive, who can make the right reads. And to me, it's a two-way battle when I spoke to Coach. I'm interested to see who wins it. Nick Garcia, the senior, and Mark Citro, the sophomore. Who wins that battle? Because that quarterback is going to be a huge part of this offense. Got to make quick decisions. Got to be able to do play action. And it's going to set the tone for this offense. And to wrap it all off, I got to give a kicker, right? Mars, our Frank's finest kicker, Nick Reed, one of the best kickers in the class and could be one of the best kickers in Section 1. Mars, what do you want to talk about?
I'm going to talk about Rye. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that if you're going to look at the top two teams, now granted, I think Somers and John J. Cross River, that was a hell of a game, but it felt like there was a game that we all kind of wanted to see, and that was the Rye-Somers battle, right? And I think that would have been a showdown of the ages, the battle of the Titans. Now, the Cross River game was great. I just think Rye was that other team that you felt like they didn't have the chance to play against the top dog, which was Somers last year. And I think it would have been interesting to see a Kaiser versus Caden Whaling, face-off, right? And I think that would have been a battle for the ages. But Rye now has that guy who I mentioned last week as being the next, Kaiser of the league, and that Caden Whaling has just proven himself to be that showtime type of player, right? He's going to show up at any time you need him, short yardage, long yardage. He'll come in all different ways, and I think that he's surrounded by a bunch of talent. I mean, we don't even know projected starters, right? But you can still say that Rye's going to show up, and they're going to bring back a lot of players.
They'll bring back some skill guys. Yeah.
Even though like I said, you don't know projected wise, but you can just tell, right? Caden Williams is a guy. Owen Kovacs is a dude that is an athlete, a quarterback that, I think that if I'm going to make an X factor for this year, I think it's going to be him, because I think if he shows out and he not only shows his ability to throw the ball, but if he can show his athleticism, and now you're giving Rye a dual threat, a quarterback who can move, and you have a running back, which everyone knows that can move. That's going to be such a hard thing to defend against. But it's also going to have to ride on the backs of guys like Jack Arnett, right? And this defense, it's going to really have to step up, and especially I think these guys are foaming at the mouth with the chance to now show that they are the best team in the league. Because like you said, they were the defending champions, right? And everyone was talking about Somers last year, and I'm sure that they were kind of listening in the background, saying, "Hey, listen, we're still the champs."
Yeah, and I take some blame for it too. I was saying Somers and John J. Cross River. That was the battle of the two best teams.
We both said
and Rye's sitting there like, wait a minute. Yep. We were undefeated too.
Yep, exactly, and that is, and I can call myself when I'm wrong, and I can agree to disagree about all these different debates, but I can see that Rye has this chippiness to him, which is, I think, a dangerous thing when you have all these skill guys. There's one thing if you're a great team that is like full of yourself, right? That's one thing. But when you're a team that's full of talent and you have this grittiness to you, that's a scary thing to go up against. And I think Rye is going to be a dangerous team. Yeah, it's interesting.
Sure. Let's go to another team, Marcy Eastchester. And Eastchester in 2020, they went 3-3. And when you spoke to Coach, they're looking to take it one day at a time. This is another team that's going to have a lot of inexperience, but they want to keep getting better as the season goes along. And they're looking to get more consistent offensively. They were a big rush attack team, but they want to get more consistent. And defensively, they have a big turn. They have a lot of kids they have to replace. And we're going to go over those projected starters, Mars. I talk about offensively, 4 of the 11 projected starters back on the offensive line. 2 of them, they lose their stud quarterback in Angelo Sparadino. They lost some other guys, Cam Clark, DiAgostino, a couple of the offensive linemen. A lot of well-known faces on that offense, but defensively, Mars, one starter returning. You have to replace 10 starters. So, again, when I say inexperienced, Mars, I mean, that's no question with the amount of starters you have to replace. But what does it also create? Opportunity. So you're going to see a lot of new faces trying to make plays on this team. And a couple of those guys, let's start with one well-known guy, Chris Howard on the offensive defensive line. He's the anchor. He's going to have to be it on both sides of the ball. Expect big things from that young man. But another guy, linebacker, the one returning starter, Mars, Dom Sparadino, the junior. I thought he was a really active defender, and he could be a breakout player on both sides of the ball. But a couple other guys at the quarterback spot. Again, another quarterback battle going on. I'm interested to see who wins it. Frankie Provenzel, the junior, 5'9", 160 pounds, and Gabe Diaversa Herbert. I hope I didn't butcher your name, but another junior. This is another battle at the quarterback spot. I'm interested to see who comes out on top. But there's going to be a lot of inexperience, Mars. And the one thing I am going to look for, I think this Eastchester offensive line can come together, led by Chris Howard. Let's go to another team, Pelham, Mars. Pelham in 2020, they went 1-3. Coach talks about, listen, Pelham has been a slow build for a few years now. They want to get to competing in Class A, and especially this South Division. They want to be one of the better programs, and you could feel the excitement in Pelham. And the big thing on offense is there were too many turnovers in the spring. Let's just call it. They need to do a better job protecting the ball. And defensively, they thought, a lot of the guys, they were really young, and they played pretty well for the most part, and they're returning a bunch of them. So there's a lot of excitement, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And they're bringing back players, Mars. Offensively, 7 of the 11 projected starters back, 4 out of the 5 on the offensive line. Now, the big loss is their quarterback. They have to replace a stud 3-year starter in Volpe, and they lose Jeremiah Reen. But they return a bunch of guys on offense, and defensively, 9 of the 11 starters coming back. And if you look at some of the players, to focus on, it all's got to start to me with Thomas Shelton, the running back and linebacker, 6 feet, 225 pounds. To me, he could be one of the better players in Class A that not a lot of people talk about, and people need to focus on him. But to me, the breakout player for this team is Luke Green. He's an offensive guard, offensive tackle, defensive tackle. This is a multi-sport athlete, Mars, the junior, 30-year varsity player, hard worker. He's just a tough dude, and I think he's going to show out this year. Another guy to keep in mind, defensive end and running back Josiah Campbell, an explosive edge guy. This guy is built. He's not the tallest guy, but he's got good strength, good burst. It's hard to run outside on him. And the guy that a lot of the coaches are excited about is Daniel Fredback, the quarterback. Again, he has big shoes to fill with Volpe. Not a tall guy like Volpe, but 5'9". He has had a really strong summer. And to round it all off, Mars, Connor Toe on the defensive line and offensive line. Big, strong kid. He's going to be another one of those stalwarts in both fronts. He's going to have to be. And Pelham's offensive line and defensive line is really going to have to set the tone for them to compete in that South Division. I think this defense could end up being pretty darn good. Mars, what team do you want to talk about?
I'll talk about Pelham. I think that when you look at this team, other than Mayapack, has probably the most returning players, right? And
yep.
And I think that's very interesting to see because, as you mentioned, Pelham has had some struggles, and I think that they're looking to establish themselves as being a contender, right? And it's a tough thing to do in A when you have all these teams,
yes,
right? But Pelham, I think, and not saying I don't like making bold predictions before we get to see any play, right, regular season play. But when you look at all the returning players defensively, like 9 out of the 11, right, that's such a big.
It's deal. A lot of experience coming.
Back, and I think that that's only going to help. And it's 7 of the 11 offensively, 4 out of the 5 offensive line. I feel like that's such a good thing to see for a coach and for any coach on that staff or any player on that team. It just shows you that they at least will be melding perfectly together that group of kids that are returning starters. But it's really going to depend on that leadership. Yeah. I mean, as much as I say that, returning players gives you an advantage,
but it doesn't correlate to wins.
It doesn't automatically correlate to winning. You can make that projection that there's a chance that they can win because they have more veteran leadership. In high school sports, that happens. But it also doesn't matter if let's just say that group of seniors is not really pushing themselves, or they aren't trying as well, or they just aren't playing to the level in which they should be playing. Right?
Very good point.
That when I look at Pelham, it's really going to be about, can these seniors execute.
Yep.
Right? These returning players, can they execute? If they can follow the game plan and execute, then I think this could be one of Pelham's best seasons they've had in a few years, right? And I think that is something to hang your hat on. And you can put this clip in your locker room television if you want. But the point is, it's going to be up to you. It's going to be up. If I was the coach, I'd say, seniors, this is your last year here, right? How do you want to be remembered?
Yeah.
Do the most returning players on this squad? Do you want to go down as a team as a losing record?
There's a lot of teams in the South that have a lot of inexperienced team. Like, you feel the moment is right in front of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's go to another team, our Sleepy Hollow, and they have a new coach, Jerry Flora, in his first season. In 2020, they went 2-4. 2 wins in back-to-back seasons, which 2 wins has been the most since they've had since 2016. So this is another team trying to build and come together. And when I spoke to Coach, he told me that, they are young. They're trying to build a program that can be sustainable in the future. And offensively, they're going to run a triple gun offense, Mars. They want to be physical. Defensively, they're running that 4-3. I'm interested to see how this program reacts to the new coach and new program. Now, offensively, I'm not exactly, I don't have a confirmation on the projected starters coming back, but they do return 3 of their 5 offensive linemen, but they don't return their quarterback. And their quarterback, Ben Good, was a real stud for them. Guy broke school records, is going to be a big-time guy they have to replace. And they also lost some talented skill guys. But defensively, they do bring back 5 of the 11 starters, which will help. Players to watch for me, their cornerback, safety, and wide receiver, Mike Scaglione. He was a Frank's finest. And again, coaches absolutely rave about when you bring him up. And to me, you see on tape exactly what they say. And that's because his versatility, he's tough, he's gritty, and he's going to have to be the leader on this team. And another guy to keep in mind is their quarterback. He was a quarterback and linebacker. You could tell, again, what kind of player he is. Aaron Orduino. Again, I apologize if I butcher his name, but this kid, well-built, 5'10", 195 pounds, athletic, leader, smart player, and they say really, really smart football player, and really smart young man. And he's going to be a big part of their offense. And so this is going to be, a lot's going to be put on his plate, replacing a guy like Ben Good, but this is a guy that they have a lot of confidence in. And to me, again, the biggest question mark, you're going to see a lot of new faces on this team. But I want to see how kids, sometimes when you get a new coach, and again, it's no disrespect to the old coach, because, I thought the old coach did a pretty good job too with this program. But sometimes when you get a new coach, it brings a different kind of energy to the program. So I'm interested to see how these kids react to this. So that's my kind of take on Sleepy Hollow, Mars. Let's go to another team, and let's talk about Nyack. And Nyack, coached by Jarrell Jones, who I think has done an underrated job and doesn't get enough credit for the work he's done in Nyack since he's been there. In 2020, March, they went 2-1. They lost the regional to Rye after that huge victory against Spring Valley. And Coach talked about they graduated a lot of kids, and they're still kind of regrouping from COVID, Mars. This team was hit hard by COVID in 2020, missed multiple games, barely practiced, and they're still kind of feeling the ill effects of it. They wrote an article in LoHud, I think it was just today that I read, about the numbers being a problem. But, they're not going to make excuses. They want to fight for a playoff spot, and they have done a good job over the past few years, but they need to offensively find their identity because of the amount of kids that graduated and because of the heavy reliance on JV players coming up. But defensively, they were really stout in the spring. I'm interested to see if they can duplicate that. But you look at the projected starters, Mars, offensively, 2 of the 11, right, coming back. That's a lot of guys. 1 out of 5 on the offensive line. They got to replace their quarterback. Defensively, 3 of the 11. And they lost some guys like Cephas, Coulange on defense that were big-time players for them. But if you look at players to watch, Aiden Carton, to me, offensive tackle and defensive tackle, one of the best linemen in Class A, 6'4", 280 pounds. He could be one of the better two-way offensive and defensive linemen in the class. And a guy that people need to keep their eye on, my breakout player for this team, Harrison Jordan Marcy. He's a tight end, quarterback, wide receiver, linebacker. This guy is put him all over the field to go make plays. This kid, well-built, 6'2", 190 pounds, was a really solid blocking tight end and special teamers for the team in the spring. He's obviously going to take a huge role. Quarterback and corner, another kid, Michael Fowler, the junior. Brother was Kevin Fowler, who was a good quarterback for them. He was an all-league corner, so this kid is a smooth athlete at 5'11". He's going to be taking up that quarterback role. Another guy in the defense, one of the returning stars, not so much starter, but a rotational guy, Noah Striplin. He got experience, especially against the game against Rye. Another guy, Ryan LaPierre, the junior. They think he's going to be a dynamic kid. And one guy, offensive lineman to keep in mind next to Aiden Carton, Paul de Monteverde, the senior, they say he's the strongest kid on the team. There's going to be a lot of unknowns on this Nyack team, Mars, but one thing I know is the staff does a good job. They're going to be well coached. I'm interested to see how they react. Mars, what team do you want to talk about?
I'll definitely continue with Nyack, and I can agree with you to the fact that I've seen them coach up these kids very well, right? And I think it's going to be a struggle for sure. I think that it's going to be a tough year, especially with having so close to what happened during the spring season, right? Where you lost a lot of opportunity to play, and I think that that's going to be, a very tough thing to bounce back from. But I have full confidence that the coaching staff is doing a good job, and they're, I think they're ready for the challenge. I really think it's going to depend on really the young guys who are now seniors to really step up. I mean, it tells me that they've lost a lot of players that they were really keen on to be successful, and I think that I've seen teams do that where young players really make a leadership role, and they just step right in and they are successful. So I could see Nyack doing that, especially with a coaching staff that has done as well as they did, and I think that they are coaching up these kids very well, and I applaud them for doing so. And it's really, you got to give credit to the kids too, for it's a tough situation where everything, losing games and everything, but at least you always see them putting the full on effort out there.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
And I think Nyack has that grittiness to them, which I like to see in a football team.
Let's round it off with the final two teams, Mars. Let's start with Tappan Z, coached by Ralph Annucci. In 2020, Mars, I thought they were a surprise team. They went 3-2, their first winning season since 2016. They had that really nice victory at the end of the year against Scarsdale. And to me, offensively, they look to establish a stronger running game. I mean, that was a big thing that coach emphasized. And on defense, they want to do a better job of stopping the run. Too many big plays in the run game was given up by this defense. And when you look at players coming back offensively, Mars, 2 of the 11 projected starters, they got to replace a lot of guys. Those 2 starters on offense were from the offensive line. They got to replace guys like Andrew Tarpey and their quarterback Seltzer, who were really strong players for them defensively. Also a lot of guys, right? 3 out of the 11. But again, just because, you don't bring back a lot of guys doesn't mean you can't be successful. It creates new opportunities. And a couple guys to keep in mind, linebacker and running back, Brett McCarthy, the junior. I did a breakdown video on him. He's just a ball of energy. This kid, 5'7", 180 pounds, really disruptive on the defensive end. And a couple linemen. Let's talk about Frank Ruiz, offensive tackle and defensive end. Matt Pylines. And again, I apologize if I butcher his name. These are the veteran guys coming back. I'm going to have to anchor on both sides, both fronts. So it's going to be important for them to make some plays. But a couple other guys. How about TJ Tarpey? Again, I don't know the relationship to the other Tarpey, but the junior cornerback and wide receiver. I thought he had a pretty solid game against Scarsdale. This kid, 5'11", 150 pounds. And then the quarterback battle. Another team with another quarterback battle. I'm interested to see who comes out on top. Mike Mooney, the senior, and Pat Phelan. Both guys battling it out. But to me, one of the biggest questions, besides the quarterback spot, is the running back spot. But I will say this. I am a little bit excited about the defensive front seven. I think they could be pretty solid. Finally, Mars, the last team to wrap it up before our bold predictions, Clarkstown North. And we know coached by longtime coach Joe Trongone. And 2020 was a really rough year, Mars. That spring season, not 2020. But the spring season, 0-5. And it was tough. They had a lot of young players, too many big plays, giving up too many mistakes. It wasn't a great year, but you want to see if these kids can learn from it. And Coach talked about them being physical and doing the little things right. And it's true. The little things lead to big things. If you could do a lot of little things correctly, and that was a big emphasis for the coach. And they're going to bring back players, Mars. Offensively, 7 of the 11 starters returning on the offensive line, 3 out of the 5, including bringing back their quarterback. And same thing defensively, 7 of the 11 projected starters back. And the players to watch, to me, it starts with their center and defensive tackle, Pat Reynolds. This kid is a Division I prospect at 6'4", 285 pounds. He could be an anchor on both fronts. Again, one of the better centers in Section 1. Another kid to keep in mind, my breakout player for this team, running back and outside linebacker, Kenny Loudon, the junior. He's an explosive runner, and on defense, he can really stick you when he's got you lined up. This is going to be a guy as a two-way player, going to be big. But let's go to talk about some other guys, right? Their quarterback, Lex Malizia, the junior, 5'11", 170 pounds. He was a really raw player when I watched him in the spring, but I thought he was improving out of play action, and that's big in this kind of offense. A guy who can roll out, a guy who can he can take off running, and he can hit you on those play action passes. And I'm going to see if he can improve on that. And some other guys, Nick Meritato, small, shifty guy, about 5'7", 135 pounds. And then a couple big boys, Brian Bordaz, the junior, 6'1", 205 pounds, strong kid, young player who saw significant minutes and significant reps, and they're going to rely on him on both sides. And another guy, Nick Chaikon, and I hope I said your name right, but this young man at 6'5", 210 pounds, he was a tight end DN, Mars, one of the better blocking tight ends that I watched, and he's a big target. So, and finally to round it off, Eric Gilzine, another running back. You could see that they're bringing back some offensive firepower from that team, and these guys are two-way players, so they're playing on both sides of the ball, Mars. I think, and we'll get to our bold prediction shortly, but I think Clarkstown North is going to be heading in the right direction. Who do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Clarkstown North, and I think the same thing. I mean, it was a struggle for sure in the spring. 0-5, and it's a tough pill to swallow when that happens. But Clarkstown North is not a team that stays down for that long, and when they were back in the AA days when we used to play against North, they were always a tough opponent to go up against for a very long time, and I could see that continuing back this year, right? And I think that the fact that they have a lot of returning players, 7 of the 11 on offense, 7 of 11 on defense, 3 out of 5 on the offensive line, is definitely projected. Is a good thing to see, right? And I keep making sure I emphasize that projected.
Yes, because kids can get beaten out.
Kids can get beaten out in practice. This is not the coaches didn't tell us who's starting, who's not starting. We don't have an insider track to any of this. But we just look, we analyze
the roster, the tape, talk to the coaches,
who's returning, and we're just making a projection of who we think was going to come back. But based on those things, we look at how North is going to have a lot of returning guys, and I think that it's really going to revolve around a guy like Pat Reynolds, right? A guy who is a Frank's finest, a center defensive line,
and he's a transfer, right? He's not even one of the returning guys.
And it's just that's the point is that he's not returning, but he's a transfer that is now going to be somebody that you need to prioritize in your offense and defense, because he's going to be an anchor, right? He's going to be somebody that you are going to rely on quite often, and then you're going to have a lot of these other guys that need to just step up and make sure that they should come in with a chip on their shoulder.
Absolutely,
right? Everyone was looking down on them for having a really tough year last year, right? And losing always builds character, right? As much as everyone hates it, everyone hates losing.
Everyone hates,
but it develops character. I guarantee you that all those kids that were on that team that were returning or coming back or transfers are now looking at this and saying, everyone thinks that we're going to lose or we're going to be one of the worst teams in this league again, but let's not do that. Let's not give them anything to say about us in that fashion. Let's only say positive things about them, and I think this is going to drive them to want to be better, and I think they will.
All right, that was all the teams, Marks. The final thing before we go, I'm going to give bold predictions, and I'm going to give a couple predictions, and you're going to tell me if you want to buy any of mine or sell any of mine. And again, these bold predictions, I have a little bit of fun, but I'm going to have some courage and put out some statements that I think is going to happen in Class A by the end of the season. We'll see if I'm smart or if I'm foolish. And let's start it off right away, Mars. Clarkstown North is going to be my first bold prediction. They are 4-11 the last 2 seasons. I think this season they are going to match that win total. They're going to win 4 or more games this time around. And they went 4-11 2 years. They're at least going to double that win total. They're going to win 4 or more is my first bold prediction. My second one, Mars, my dark horse team is going to be Pelham. I think Pelham is going to make the playoffs. They're going to be one of the final 8. This is going to be the year Pelham breaks through and makes the playoffs. My third bold prediction, Mars, I think the North League, and again, there's a North League and a South League, but I think in the final 4 teams, that final 4 in the playoffs, 3 out of the 4 are going to be represented by North League teams. The North is going to show their dominance this season, and they're going to represent 3 out of the 4. And my final prediction, the championship. I think it's going to be a deja vu from 2019, and it's going to be Rye over Yorktown in the section title game, and Rye is going to repeat as section champions. And that is my bold prediction. Mars, do you want to buy or sell anything that I'm offering?
So I'll go through each one. I think.
Are you going to go through all? You just have to do one of them. Yeah,
you're going to go through all of them. Yeah. I'll take a look at the first one. Whether Clarkstown North will match their 4 wins, will match the 4
or more wins.
4 or more wins. I'll buy that. I'll buy that take, and I think that, like I mentioned at the end of the team preview segment, I think that they have a lot of returning guys, and I think that this set and the grittiness to them is going to make them want to win more, and I can definitely see that happening. Next one, dark horse team of Pelham.
Making the playoffs.
Making the playoffs.
Buy or selling?
I think I'm going to sell that.
Oh!
I think that they're going to.
You hear that, Pelham?
They will be a better team in the regular season for sure, but I think they'll lose in a tough game to the. They'll probably end up being, I think, either 8 or 9, and I think.
Well, 8 gets them in.
Well, I mean, like, they're at the because there's a qualifying round. I'm talking about.
Well, no, it's going to be again, and the bracketology. It's different,
They don't
right?
have a
So it's
qualifying
top
round.
3 gets in, and there's a 4-team wild card. So it's going to be based on records, and you can see the tiebreakers on Kevin Devaney's bracketology.
Well, then
but it's going to be the 8.
My selling point will be that they will be just beneath the number at 9.
All right.
That's what I think.
All right.
The next one, North League will show dominance, and the playoffs will have 3 out of the 4 will be in the final 4. I'll buy that one. I think when you look at some of the final 4 teams, and maybe I'll make a bold prediction. When you look at the North teams, I think that you'll have Rye, Somers.
Oh, Rise South.
I know I'm saying Rye. I'm saying
that's
this
a
is my
South
bold
team.
prediction. My final 4. Rye, Somers, Yorktown, and Cross River will be the 4 teams, and I think I can buy that.
And if that's true, that would mean my thing worked.
And then lastly, deja vu of Rye versus Yorktown, and Rye will win as repeat as champions. I think I will sell that one. I think what's going to happen, and Rye I think will be in the championship, the section championship, but I think it's going to be John Jay Cross River that will be in the section championship. I think that you're going to see a lot, and maybe you might call me a homer for John Jay Cross River.
My goodness.
But I think Cross River is going to have their studs, their guys like DiChiara are going to show out this season. I mean, he showed out already last year as a sophomore, and now he's going to be a junior, older, more experienced, and you're going to have a lot of athletes on this team. As much as they lost a lot of dudes, I think that this is they're like that Alabama style, but in Section 1, that they continually are successful in this league. And it was I was thinking to myself, either them or Somers, not downgrading Yorktown at all. I just think that Somers is a similar facet, as in they just have talent like crazy. Their rosters are massive. There's so many kids on this team that they can clearly just plug and play.
So you got Somers or John Jay facing Rye.
And that's why, because I think Rye is going to kind of walk into the playoffs.
Walk into it.
I just think that Rye has the most talented roster, and I think all of Section 1, and I think not all of Section, but Section 1A for sure. And I think that their league is a little weaker than North is, and that's why I bought the whole North League will show dominance, because I think that South is not as dominant as North is, but that's the point. I think Rye will win a lot bigger margins compared to North games. I think North games will be a lot more competitive. I think Rye will have more of a bigger victories, and then they'll get to the playoffs and they'll play against, they'll play against maybe Yorktown in round 1, and I think the Somers.
Well, you don't have to go there. Don't go that deep into it.
I'm making bold
takes
there.
There. But we want to thank everyone again. That was our team previews for Section 1A, and we went through a lot. And we wanted to give each team a little bit of spotlight and give some bold predictions to have some fun. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys so much, and we can't wait for this football season. Have a great rest of your night.